Here's a question that might surprise you. What do a British economy car and the American automotive landscape of the early 1960s have in common? More than you'd think. While you were probably driving your Chevrolet Impala or Ford Galaxy in 1962, Ford Motor Company was making a calculated gamble across the Atlantic that would eventually reshape how Americans thought about small cars. The year 1962 was pivotal for America. John Glenn had just orbited the Earth. The Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the brink. And in your driveway? Chances are you had something with a V8 engine, chrome bumpers, and enough steel to build a small bridge. The idea of a lightweight, economical car seemed almost un-American. But Ford of Britain had other ideas. The Cortina, named after the Italian ski resort Cortina d'Ampezzo, site of the 1956 Winter Olympics, was about to debut. And while this wasn't an American car in the traditional sense, understanding the Cortina's story reveals something important about the global automotive revolution that was coming to our shores, whether we were ready for it or not. This is the story of a car that most American classic car enthusiasts have never driven, but one that represented a fundamental shift in automotive thinking, a shift that would eventually influence even Detroit's mighty giants. So let me share 13 facts about the Ford Cortina that illuminate not just British automotive history, but the beginning of a new era that would touch every American driver. Fact number 1. The Cortina was born from desperate competition. Let me take you back to 1960. Ford of Britain was in trouble. Their main competitor, BMC, the British Motor Corporation, was dominating the British market with the Austin and Morris brands. Ford's existing lineup, including the Anglia and the Classic, wasn't cutting it in the crucial family car segment. Sir Patrick Hennessy, chairman of Ford of Britain, gave his engineers a clear mandate: design a car that could compete directly with BMC's best sellers, particularly the Morris Oxford. But here's the shocking part: they had to do it in just 18 months. In Detroit, designing a new model typically took 3 to 4 years. The British Ford team had half that time. The project was codenamed Archbishop, and it represented Ford's acknowledgement that the British market demanded something fundamentally different from American tastes. While we Americans were buying cars with wingspans wider than some airplanes, British families needed economy, practicality, and maneuverability for narrow European streets. Fact number 2, it was engineered for extraordinary simplicity. Here's something that would have seemed radical to American engineers in 1962. The Cortina was deliberately designed to be simple, not simplified, simple. There's a difference. The engineering team, led by Harley Kopp, made a conscious decision to avoid complexity. The Cortina used a conventional front-engine, rear-wheel drive layout. The suspension was straightforward: McPherson struts up front, a live axle with leaf springs in the rear. Nothing fancy, nothing that would confuse a mechanic in a small-town garage. The base engine was a 1,198 cubic centimeter, or 73 cubic inch, inline four-cylinder producing just 48 horsepower. To put that in perspective, the 1962 Ford Galaxy 500 offered a 352 cubic inch V8 with 220 horsepower as its base engine. The Cortina's entire engine displaced less than 1 cylinder of some American V8s. But here's what made it clever: that tiny engine could push the Cortina to 60 miles per hour in about 23 seconds and deliver fuel economy exceeding 30 miles per gallon. In an era when most American cars struggled to get 15 miles per gallon, this was revolutionary thinking. Fact number 3. The name came from a marketing masterstroke. The name Cortina wasn't randomly chosen. Ford's marketing department wanted something that evoked elegance, sophistication, and European glamour. Cortina d'Ampezzo, the Italian alpine resort, had just hosted the 1956 Winter Olympics, and the name carried connotations of style and international prestige. This was deliberate positioning. Ford wanted British buyers to see this as more than just another economy car. They wanted it to feel aspirational, even though the base model Cortina Deluxe cost just £639, approximately $1,790 at 1962 exchange rates. Compare that to the 1962 Ford Fairlane, which had a base price of $2,304 in the American market. The Cortina was positioned as affordable transportation with a touch of class, a combination that resonated strongly with British buyers. Fact number 4. It featured body styles Americans never saw. The 1962 Cortina launched with 2-door and 4-door sedan variants. But here's what most Americans don't know. Ford of Britain quickly expanded the range to include a station wagon, called an estate in British terminology, and even a panel van for commercial use. The estate version, introduced in 1963, became hugely popular with British families. It offered practicality that American station wagons provided, but in a package roughly 2/3 the size. The cargo area could swallow an impressive amount of luggage or goods, and the rear seats folded flat, a feature that wouldn't become common in American wagons for several more years. The panel van variant showed Ford's understanding of the British commercial vehicle market. Small businesses needed affordable, economical delivery vehicles. The Cortina van, with its car-based platform, offered better ride quality and fuel economy than traditional commercial vehicles, while still providing adequate cargo capacity. Fact number 5. The GT version changed everything. In 1963, Ford introduced the Cortina GT, and this is where the story gets interesting for American enthusiasts. The GT wasn't just a trim package with stripes and badges, it was a genuinely enhanced performance variant. The GT received a more powerful engine, a 1500 cubic centimeter, 91 cubic inch, inline-4 producing 78 horsepower. That might sound modest by American standards, but remember, the entire car weighed just 1,680 pounds. Power-to-weight ratio matters, and the GT could reach 60 miles per hour in about 14 seconds, with a top speed exceeding 90 miles per hour. More importantly, the GT featured front disc brakes, a closer ratio gearbox, stiffer suspension, and distinctive styling cues including GT badges and special trim. Ford was applying American hot rod thinking, more power, better handling, distinctive appearance, to a compact British platform. Fact number 6, it dominated touring car racing. Here's something that will surprise most American classic car fans. The Cortina became a racing legend. In 1964, Ford hired the legendary Jim Clark, a 2-time Formula One world champion, to drive a Cortina GT in the British Saloon Car Championship. Clark didn't just compete, he dominated. He won the championship, and the Cortina GT became a giant killer, beating much larger and more powerful cars through superior handling and reliability. Ford's motorsport division, based at Boreham in England, developed increasingly sophisticated race variants. The most famous was the Cortina Lotus, developed in collaboration with Lotus Cars. This variant used a Lotus-developed twin-cam engine, producing up to 105 horsepower in street trim, and significantly more in race specification. The Cortina Lotus won the European Touring Car Championship in 1963, beating competitors from Mercedes-Benz, Alfa Romeo, and BMW. This racing success did something important. It gave the Cortina credibility. It wasn't just cheap transportation, it was a car that could win races against the best Europe had to offer. Fact number 7. Production numbers were staggering. Between 1962 and 1966, Ford of Britain manufactured over 1 million Mark I Cortinas. Let me put that in perspective. The entire production run of the 1955 through 1957 Chevrolet Nomad, a car beloved by American collectors, was just around 22,900 units across all 3 years. The Cortina's success was unprecedented for Ford of Britain. At its peak, the Dagenham assembly plant was producing over 3,000 Cortinas per week. The car became Britain's best-selling model, outselling the Morris Oxford and achieving exactly what Sir Patrick Hennessy had demanded. But here's the really shocking part. Ford also built Cortinas in other countries. Assembly plants in Ireland, Denmark, Belgium, and even New Zealand produced Cortinas for local markets. The car became Ford's first truly international small car success story, a template they would later follow with models like the Escort and Focus. Fact number 8. American dealers briefly imported them. Here's a fact that surprises even knowledgeable American car enthusiasts. In the mid-1960s, some American Ford dealers actually imported Cortinas for sale in the United States. These weren't official Ford Motor Company imports, they were independent dealer initiatives. Dealers in California and other markets saw an opportunity. The Volkswagen Beetle was selling well, proving Americans would buy small, economical imported cars. Some enterprising Ford dealers thought, why should Volkswagen get all that business? We'll bring in Cortinas. The experiment was short-lived. The Cortina wasn't federalized for American safety standards, parts availability was problematic, and Ford Motor Company didn't provide factory support. Most importantly, American buyers who wanted small Fords could purchase the Falcon, which was larger, more powerful, and already designed for American roads and regulations. Still, a small number of Cortinas made it to American roads. If you ever encounter a left-hand drive Cortina Mark I in the United States, you're looking at a rare piece of automotive history. Evidence of an interesting might have been in Ford's global strategy. Fact number 9. It pioneered modern Ford design language. Look at a 1962 Cortina and you'll see something familiar. Clean, angular lines with minimal chrome decoration. This was a radical departure from the Baroque styling that characterized both American and British cars of the late 1950s. The Cortina's design, penned by Roy Brown Jr., emphasized functionality and modernity. The body featured crisp character lines, a simple grille, and restrained use of bright work. This wasn't just cost-cutting, it was a deliberate aesthetic choice that would influence Ford's styling worldwide. When you look at the 1965 Ford Mustang, you can see echoes of this design philosophy. Clean lines, minimal chrome, emphasis on proportion rather than decoration. The Cortina helped establish what would become Ford's design language for the next decade, a language that emphasized youthful sportiness over traditional luxury. Fact number 10. The dashboard was radically simple. Step inside a 1962 Cortina and you'll find a dashboard that makes a modern car look like a Boeing cockpit. The standard Cortina featured a single, centrally mounted speedometer. That's it. No tachometer, no fuel gauge, no temperature gauge, just speed. Higher trim levels added more instrumentation, but Ford's philosophy was clear: give buyers the essentials and charge for luxuries. This kept the base price low and allowed buyers to customize their cars through options. The upholstery was simple vinyl in base models with cloth available as an upgrade. The seats were thin, upright, and provided minimal side support. Fine for British roads where average speeds were lower, less ideal for American highways. But here's what made the Cortina's interior notable. Everything was logically arranged. Controls fell naturally to hand. Visibility was excellent in all directions. The simplicity meant there was less to break and easier repairs when something did go wrong. This was user-centered design before that term existed. Fact number 11. It sparked a revolution in corporate fleet sales. Here's an aspect of the Cortina story that reveals its true impact. It revolutionized corporate fleet sales in Britain. Before the Cortina, company car fleets typically consisted of larger, more expensive models. The Cortina proved that a smaller, more economical car could still project professional respectability. British companies bought Cortinas by the thousands for their sales representatives, middle managers, and field staff. The combination of low purchase price, excellent fuel economy, and manageable maintenance costs made it an obvious choice for fleet managers watching their budgets. This established a template that persists today. The Cortina proved that fleet vehicles didn't need to be large or luxurious. They needed to be reliable, economical, and presentable. This thinking would eventually influence American corporate fleet purchases, though it took another decade and multiple oil crises before American companies fully embraced the concept. Fact number 12. The Mark II made the first generation instantly classic. In 1966, Ford replaced the Mark I Cortina with the Mark II, a completely redesigned car that was larger, heavier, and more conventional in appearance. This decision instantly made the Mark I a distinct entity in automotive history. The Mark II was objectively a better car in many ways, quieter, more comfortable, more refined. But it lost some of the original's character. The Mark I's lean, purposeful appearance gave way to something softer and more mainstream. Today, collectors and enthusiasts prize the Mark I Cortina precisely because it represents that brief moment when Ford dared to be different. The GT and Lotus variants in particular have become highly collectible. A well-preserved Cortina Lotus can command prices exceeding $50,000 at auction, remarkable for a car that cost less than $2,000 when new. Fact number 13. It influenced Ford's global small car strategy. Here's the most important secret about the Cortina. It proved Ford could succeed with genuinely small cars designed for local markets. This might not sound revolutionary, but consider the context. In 1962, American automakers approached international markets by either exporting American-designed cars or creating minimally modified versions of domestic models. The Cortina was different. It was designed from the ground up for European conditions, European buyers, and European roads. The Cortina's success gave Ford confidence to pursue regional design strategies. This led directly to the Escort, which replaced the Cortina in 1968 and became Europe's best-selling car. It influenced thinking that eventually produced the Fiesta in the 1970s and the Focus in the 1990s. For American enthusiasts, understanding the Cortina means understanding how Ford evolved from a company that thought globally but designed locally. When Ford eventually brought European-designed cars to America, like the Focus in 1999, they were following a path the Cortina helped pioneer. The Cortina taught Ford that different markets required different solutions. Americans wanted size, power, and comfort. Europeans wanted economy, maneuverability, and practicality. Both were legitimate needs deserving purpose-built solutions. This seems obvious now, but in 1962 it was genuinely innovative thinking. So there you have it, 13 facts about the Ford Cortina that illuminate not just British automotive history, but the beginning of a global transformation in how cars were designed, marketed, and sold. Most of you probably never drove a Cortina. It wasn't part of the American automotive landscape the way the Mustang, the Corvette, or the Thunderbird were. But the Cortina mattered because it represented new thinking that would eventually influence even the biggest American manufacturers. When the oil crises of the 1970s forced Americans to reconsider our love affair with big cars, the groundwork had already been laid by vehicles like the Cortina. When Ford introduced the Fiesta and eventually brought European Fords to American showrooms, they were following principles established in Dagenham in the early 1960s. The Cortina reminds us that automotive history isn't just about the cars we drove, it's about the ideas that shaped how manufacturers thought about what we needed and wanted from our vehicles. Now I want to hear from you. Did you ever encounter a Cortina? Maybe you saw one while traveling overseas, or perhaps you knew someone who imported one. Maybe you've noticed how Ford's thinking evolved from the land yachts of the 50s to the more international approach of later decades? Share your experiences in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into an overlooked chapter of Ford history, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It helps me continue researching and sharing these stories about automotive history, the famous chapters and the forgotten ones. Thank you for watching, and remember, understanding where we've been helps us appreciate where we are. The Cortina may have been a small British Ford, but its impact echoed far beyond the narrow streets of Britain.